All right, everybody, welcome back to my TV program. I am Brian Lee Durfee, author of The Forgetting Moon and The Blackest Heart, both books published by Simon & Schuster's Saga Press. Today I'm going to be reviewing an absolutely magnificent Western novel called Bendigo Shafter by Louis L'Amour, wherein I learned that Motley Crue was not the first band to ever sing Home Sweet Home. In fact, the cowboys in this novel sang Home Sweet Home around the campfire all the time. Same lyrics. And this came out in 1979, 6 years before Motley Crue's version came out. Actually, I lied. It's not the same lyrics, different lyrics. Same title, though. Just one of the interesting things that I found out about this book. Like I said, it came out in 1979. Let's review the cover because you know I love graphic design and cover illustration. So let's take a look at this. It was one of my favorite Louis L'Amour covers. It is done by an artist named Ken Logger. And look, it's just got this great scene that wraps around all the way of a cowboy with an axe in the forest. Let's see if I can get it to focus in there. I don't know. Anyway, you get the point. And I got every single Louis L'Amour novel up here on my shelf in my massive library. That is my Louis L'Amour collection. So I've got every single Louis L'Amour novel. And we rate the covers just as much as we love the covers just as much as we love the books. In fact, sometimes we like the covers more. In this instance, the awesome cover matches the awesomeness of the book. This book was based off of a short story that Louis L'Amour wrote a long, long time ago. A long, long time prior to 1979. The short story was called War Party. He liked that short story enough he wanted to expand it into a full-length novel. It took him over 6 years to do so. He really struggled to get this novel right. He really wanted it to be one of his best. And he really succeeded. So it's a good thing he took his time because the dude wrote 100 novels, most of them smaller than this, most of them about 200 pages. This one's about 400 pages. He was writing 3-4 novels a year in his heyday. This one, he just took his time with it. It is a great, great novel. Its themes, okay, so when he was writing this, he gave a little, I found out that when he was writing this, he did a few things with his notes. And this is similar, this is some writing advice for you writers. Once in a while in my book reviews, we launch into a little bit of writing advice. This is the point where we do it. And we're going to talk a little bit about his system. And the way that he constructed his outline for this book was pretty simple. And it's kind of the way I do the outlines for my own novels. And it's just to write down simple chapter headings and then leave that as your outline and then fill in the chapter later. But some of the chapter headings he has was loss of their children, aiding the Mormons, she gives away the clothing and they have to repay her, they fight the outlaws, there's a scarcity of food, there's a very long hunt, Bert and Bendigo prove their worth. These are just the names of the chapters that he's gonna fill in the story just based off the idea of the chapter. So the first planting, the first harvest, new arrivals, the menace of the Indians, and the outlaws. So that's kind of the way he did that. And one of the themes of this book is, actually the main theme of this book is ghost towns. How a lot of really successful towns in the Old West cropped up pretty fast, but they also died off really fast. And this is a story about one of those towns. And one of the theme that he wrote for this novel was a town is not made of wood and stone, but of flesh and blood. And that is sort of what our main character, Bendigo Shafter, sort of gleans towards the end of the novel, is that he has loved this town so much. He has helped build this town up from just nothing, just from a wooded forest to one cabin, then two, and then it grew to a place, and now he can sense that it's dying off, and it makes him sad. That's why we've got a lot of ghost towns in the Old West. So anyway, to make this easier, and another thing about this novel I didn't realize, but it was such a great novel that actually the Ute tribe in Utah, the Ute tribe invited Louis L'Amour himself to the Ute and Comanche peace ceremony in about the early 80s, I think it was, wherein he was given the Great Seal of the Ute tribe and a big tribal history book, which probably, I imagine those two things are probably worth millions of dollars. But it was a great honor. I mean, that's the importance this book had in Louis L'Amour's career. Anyway, I'm just going to read the back of it real quick because it gives a really decent description. A boy in his late teens on the verge of manhood, Bendigo Shafter set out in search of his destiny on a wagon train west. In a new town on the raw frontier, in an arduous cattle drive from the Pacific Northwest and to the glitter and lights of New York City. Despite all his adventures, the frontier town beckoned him back, yet he vowed that nothing would keep him from the woman he'd grown to love. But his heart belonged to the town. So anyway, that's kind of what this is about. It's about a fictional town. Now, Louis L'Amour, right in the beginning, lets us know that this is a fictional town. It's not a real town. Most of Louis L'Amour novels are set in real places, which is why I love his. For some reason, he decided to set this one in a fictional place. However, it is set up in Wyoming, near sort of the old ghost towns called Miner's Delight and South Pass City, which are real ghost towns that this fictional town is based upon. And one of the things that's cool about this, and you should Google medicine wheels. They are an ancient Native American phenomenon. Now, we still haven't figured out what they mean, but I guess they're sort of like our Native American equivalents of Stonehenge. They're just found in a lot of different places. They're just medicine wheels. Anyway, I don't know how to describe them. But Bendigo Shafter is a young boy, and he builds a cabin for a girl the lady that he kind of fancies, named Ruth Macon. Well, this cabin that he builds is the beginning of this town that springs up around the cabin. And Bendigo Shafter plays a big role in the town's growth. Not only does the town grow up around this cabin and this Ruth Macon, who's sort of the leader of the town, but I mean, the town is right in the Pioneer Trail, where they help stranded Mormons in the winter. They talk to Brigham Young. They talk to Porter Rockwell, who was one of Brigham Young's day-night assassins. Louis L'Amour's book does have Mormons in it. And unlike most Westerns these old-time Westerns by Zane Grey and some of these people that cast, and Terry Johnstone, that cast the Mormons as the villains in a lot of the Westerns, Louis L'Amour never has done that. He's got Mormons crawling in and out of his books a lot, but they're never cast as the villains. Even when Porter Rockwell shows up in this book, and Porter Rockwell was a real villain, he is not really portrayed as such. Now, the whole story is told from Bendigo's point of view. I wanted to read a couple of, and it starts when he's 18. I wanted to read a couple of pages because these pages really kind of give you a sense of Louis L'Amour's philosophies in life. And I really like the way he coins a lot of these phrases. So they're on the setup of this scene is this is when they first decide to settle in this part of Wyoming instead of keeping going towards California. So, going on would have been simple, for travel is an escape, and as long as our wagons moved, our decisions could be postponed. When one moves, one is locked in the treadmill of travel, and all decisions must await a destination. By choosing to stop, we had brought our refuge tumbling about us, and our problems can no longer be avoided. The promised land is always a distant land, aglow with golden fire. It is a land one never attains. For once attained, one faces fulfillment, and the knowledge that whatever a land may promise, it may also demand a payment of courage and strength. To destroy is easy, to build is hard, to scoff is easy, but to go on in the face of scoffing and do what is right is the way of a real man. They decide to stop and settle this little place. Based off of that, they're just like, okay, we've been fleeing into the West long enough. We need to just settle down, deal with our problems, and because the farther we go, we're just trying to escape stuff. That's kind of one of the themes of this. And then on page 8, there's another great passage that I really loved. And this is about how to build. This is a little bit more of some writing advice and how to build a good protagonist. There are okay, so here we get a sense of Bendigo Shafter's love of the land. And it's also a way to build a good protagonist by showing his love of the land. Trees are a crop, Bud Macon, to be taken only with care and thought for the forest, Bendigo said. But there are lots of trees, Bud protested. A forest is a living thing like a human body, Bendigo said. Each part dependent on all other parts. A forest needs its birds, its beavers, all its animals and plants. The forest gives shelter to the birds, but they repay the debt with the insects they eat, the droppings they leave, and the seeds they carry off to plant elsewhere. The beaver builds dams for himself, but the dams keep water in the land. And although the beaver cuts trees to use and to eat, their ponds provide water for other trees during the hot, dry months. For a moment, Bendigo held still. Listen, he whispered, and you can hear the forest breathe. This was a lesson his father had taught him, that we only borrowed from the land and borrowed with discretion and a thought for the years to come. He taught us to live in the wilderness, one must live with it. He taught us that to live in the wilderness, one must live with it. Live from it, but allow it to live also. Such was my intentions now, and so I explained it to Bud Macon. My reasons for choosing the trees I did. Yeah, they were in an argument about which trees to chop down and which ones to leave standing. And Bendigo, who has a love of the land, as does Louis L'Amour, explains. Anyway, this is a great story of a young man who grows to be an old man in this town that he loves, and all the people that surround him in this town. And he has built this town from the ground up. And then he can tell that the town is going to dwindle away and just become another ghost town, like so many old towns in the West. It's just an absolutely great novel. It's 400 pages. It's one of Louis L'Amour's longer novels. And like I said, he spent a lot of time writing it. So this is one of my favorite Louis L'Amour's. I'm going to give this one a solid 9.75 out of 10. The only parts I didn't like of this were when he decided to leave the town for a bit and go back east. Those were the parts that I didn't like very much, but mostly it's centered around this fictional Wyoming town, and it's just a great, great Western.